Ohio State earlier, South Carolina. With David Cloninger joins us, the Post and Courier, Gamecocks football, and much more. Thank you, David, for your time. So what was it like with Spencer Rattler?
Well, we haven't gotten a whole lot of one-on-one time with Rattler, but, just from looking at him through this 15 spring practices, then in the spring games, interviewing a couple of times, he seems to be, the same guy that was at Oklahoma, just dripping with talent. He's a guy that could really stabilize South Carolina's quarterback position, and he's been very polite and accommodating with the media. So just looking forward to see what he can do in the life of all.
David, when was the last time there was this much hype around a South Carolina quarterback?
Ooh, South Carolina quarterback. I'd probably have to say when Steven Garcia was first coming in, when he first signed, that is. Obviously, his first year at South Carolina wasn't even a year because he got suspended twice or arrested twice and then kicked off the team briefly. But he would probably be the guy that had the most hype around him as a quarterback. As a recruit, of course, you go a few years after Steven when Jadeveon Clowney came
in. David, with the spring game, I mean, what was kind of the I guess, tone coming out of that? What was kind of the highlight, if you will, or a couple of stories that were of most of note as the Gamecocks broke their spring game?
It's a spring game, so They kept things pretty vanilla. They didn't do a whole lot. But the main thing was everybody wanted to see Rattler throw the ball, which he did and did well. He got the ball out quick. He made good decisions. You could tell that he stepped right in and can really command the team, even though he was learning a new offense that a lot of these guys already know. So that was good to see. There were a couple of guys that will be big stars in the fall that didn't play, most notably Jaheim Bell. But that's okay. He's a guy who just had a hamstring issue. He will be back for the season. And USC did show off some guys beside him that make you really excited about South Carolina and what they can do in the fall. That being said, the offensive line still struggled, even though sacks weren't counted as in taken to the ground. If you tagged the quarterback, it went as a sack. Spencer Rattler was sacked 4 times. And if you've got that from your offensive line, and these are all experienced guys, that's not the greatest thing to see, even if it is just a spring game. So there's some concerns there about how that's going to hold up through a 12-game season.
How much is just the momentum of Shane Beamer, in year 2? They were 7-6, made a bowl, but just having him back for year 2 to continue the stability?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, obviously he came in with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement, but most people looked at it and said, it's great that you're excited, but you don't have a very good team. You have a program that's won 6 games over the past 2 years combined. So let's just see what you can do. I mean, I looked at it and said, hey, this team's probably going to be a 4-5 win squad at most. And then they turn around and win 7. And obviously, as you guys know, if you win your last game that you play, you're always going to have that carrying you through the offseason. And not only did they win it, they won it in Charlotte, which is a place that has not treated them particularly well the past few times they've been in. And they won it over North Carolina, which is kind of a quote-unquote rival to South Carolina and somebody they compete with for recruits. So that kind of excitement, and then having a winning season, which doesn't happen all that often around South Carolina, that's the kind of thing that really carries through a long offseason.
What does Shane Beamer have for South Carolina that Will Muschamp didn't?
Well, that's an interesting question. Will's a guy who's just a football coach, born to wear a whistle around his neck, and not that Shane isn't, but Will was pretty much, hey, listen, I want to just do my job, and not that he wasn't approachable, he was, not that he wasn't cordial with the media, he was, and if you got to sit with Will one-on-one, he was terrific. He was great, full of stories. Just I think that when he was at Florida, he was more open and friendly toward those Florida guys. And then when it went south, he had to deal with the bad side of the profession. So he never really got into that, friendly and open relationship with the media here. So with Shane, it's, hey, I'll do anything you need me to do. I'll sign anything, show up at anything. And he's been very approachable, even though he's had a lot of reason to get mad, to get upset with some of the performances that went on last year. He hasn't. He's been very approachable and professional and just has always had that infectiousness. And when you say, obviously Will came in with a track record. Shane doesn't because he's never been a head coach. So I think that has helped immensely. I always said that Will came in here, no matter what he did, he had 2 strikes against him the day he was hired.
David, the transfer portal giveth and taketh away, as I like to say, and it's done a little bit of both for South Carolina, and it still continues to. It's also, as a couple days ago, some more guys entering the portal. I know you'd probably need our entire final hour to kind of break it down individually of who's in and who's out, but how would you kind of summarize just the portal for the Gamecocks and how it's worked?
Well, that's what it's for, guys. I mean, the fact is that this thing came along recently and it immediately became the best recruiting tool that you can use, because outside of getting those 5-star freshmen that not every school can get, and especially can get and have them play well right away, this is how you go get an experienced player who might have logged some time at another big-time school, another big-time league, and they could come in and help you right away. So obviously USC was able to really mine it well with Spencer Rattler this year and getting some guys last year, such as Jordan Strawn, who's a starting defensive end and was at Georgia State, and then a couple of other guys that have come in. I mean, they still got Austin Stogner, the tight end from Oklahoma. Yeah. He's going to be enrolling this summer, so that's definitely going to help. But, they've lost 6 guys to the transfer portal since spring ended, and nothing against those young men. They're all good kids, but they weren't going to play. The only one who was probably going to be on the 2 deep was E.J. Jenkins, a receiver who came in last year. He came in with his best pal and a guy who he's been teammates with since middle school, Jason Brown, who was a quarterback. And then when Jason decided he was going to transfer in November, we all knew that Jenkins was going to leave. He just couldn't leave at the time because he had to get his academics in order to make sure he could play somewhere next year instead of having to sit out. So we all knew he was going to be gone after spring. And sure enough, that Monday, he was the first guy to go. So the other guys, again, Rico Powers, a receiver who's caught, I think, 2 passes in 3 years. He's a guy that entered today, and he actually wasn't with the program from the middle of spring practice on. So, again, you wish those guys well, but it's guys that knew they weren't going to play, that they probably weren't even going to make a travel roster during the rest of their career. They were not yanked. They were not told to leave, but it was like, look, guys, if you want to play, that's great, but it ain't going to be here. Yeah. So you do what you got to do.
David, what's it like for a program with South Carolina to be able to get to a bowl game and again, win the bowl game? You have all these teams that made it. They have a bunch of teams. We know they have the elite teams, but then there's the midsection. It's a fight. It might be more of a fight in the midsection of the SEC than it is at the top. What's it like to know you don't have much room for error to be able to get to 7 wins or get to be better than that?
Well, that's just the way South Carolina is. I mean, they had that 1 4-year moment under Steve Spurrier from 2010 to 2013 where they won 6 conference games a year, or 5, as it turned out, in the SEC's championship season. But the fact is, guys, South Carolina is about to enter their 32nd season in the Southeastern Conference, okay? 32nd. And how many winning seasons have they had in that from just a conference perspective, a winning SEC season? I'd have to check my math, but it's something like 8. So that's just where they are. They know that they're not Alabama. They know they're not Georgia. There have been moments to where they could kind of get there in an even keel in certain years, but they haven't figured out how to stay there. So they always know you're never going to go into a season and say, all right, well, best we're hoping for is 8-4 and a nice bowl game on January 1st. They're not going to say that as coaches or players. That's for us guys in the media.
Right.
And being around here as long as I have, it's like, look, you kind of know the limitations because, let's be honest, fellas, when you come to South Carolina, you're looking at least 3 pretty much guaranteed losses on every schedule, every year. Georgia, Texas A&M, Clemson. So right there, you're 0-2 in the league, Yeah. So you got to find a way to figure those out. And sometimes you win and it's great. Everybody's happy. But the main thing is that USC knows that it can talk about, hey, we want to compete for championships and all that. And that's great. It's terrific. It's what people want to hear. But they also know, don't say you're going to come in here and win championships, because South Carolina's been playing football for over 125 years. In all that time, guys. And not all of them were in conferences, I should note. But in all those times, they have won 1 conference championship. 1. So you know what you're getting into when you take this job.
Yeah.
So is there any hope that they go into pods in the new SEC so that maybe some of those – I mean, Clemson's probably always going to be there because of the long-time rivalry, but some of that stuff rotates off?
Well, you hope. I mean, I really think that no matter what you do, South Carolina's always going to be in kind of the same, situation that it is. No matter how you do conference scheduling, it's always been kind of weird that every time they have the rotation come around, the rotating team, South Carolina always picks up a team when it's on an upswing. It never gets Arkansas when they're bad.
Yeah.
They get Arkansas this year on the road a year after they won 9 games. Alabama's always good. Okay, you get that. But, you get Auburn in the year that Cam Newton was there. It's like, oh, shit, come on, know?
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. It depends on how the pods are going. I mean, if they say, well, all right, it's 14 pod and South Carolina's going to be in there with Vanderbilt and Kentucky and Georgia, you're like, huh, okay, well, Vandy, all right, whatever. But Kentucky's won 7 of 8 over USC, and that's after USC beat them 10 years in a row. So what's going to happen there? And then Georgia, like, I think they've beaten Georgia 19 times in about 80 meetings. So, no matter what they do, South Carolina is always pretty much going to be in the same situation because there aren't 3 other teams in the league that you can look at and say, USC is going to beat that team every year outside of Vanderbilt. There's just not any more than that.
I appreciate how much of a realist you are because there's a lot of people who can be, delusional about, expectations and things. But I think you nailed it perfectly, and that's the best way to look at it is the way that it is and the way that you're looking at it. I was just curious, has Shane Beamer has he been able to get rid of that mayo smell since the bowl game a few months back?
I hope so, but I do understand it was a couple of months where he could look a jar of mayonnaise in his face. That was quite a disgusting treat considering they won the game. I would have said, hey, man, the loser coach ought to get that.
Exactly, yeah.
As a punishment, But it was a good time. I mean, they came out. I honestly expected them to lose that bowl game, but they came out and they threw a lot of different wrinkles out there that nobody was expecting and okay, well, that works. I mean, that certainly energizes folks, but like I say around here to the fans, don't get expectation confused with hope.
Right.
Because you can have both, and that's great. You should have both, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many people say, hey, we won 7 games last year. You know what? We're going to win 9 this year. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I hope so, because that means I get to go somewhere nice for a bowl game. But I'm not going to cancel my New Year's plans just yet.
David, we love Frank Martin. We've covered him when he was at Kansas State. They when he was at South Carolina, beat Baylor up in New York at Madison Square Garden in the postseason of the tournament. I know it didn't work out. Did you enjoy – he's a different animal now. Did you enjoy covering him?
Absolutely, I did.
Yeah,
For 10 years, it was great. He treated me well. Every Monday when he had his press conferences, I learned something every single time. Learned something every time I talked to him. And it's no reflection against Lamont Paris, who's here now. But Frank, succumbed to the pressures of this job. It's another one where a lot of folks think maybe they should be better than they actually are or have been. But the fact is I understand why a change had to be made. I mean, the fact is that after that Final Four, and that was the best moment of my career, hands down, because it was so unexpected, the program was kind of stuck. And while they were having winning seasons, they weren't going to the postseason. And fellas, a program kind of stuck in neutral is almost worse than just having a bad year. Because if you have a bad year, it's going to get better. And you just had one, bad one. But this time it was like, it just seems like you're kind of in the same place. And nothing's going to get you moving. So wish Frank the best. He's already doing great on the recruiting trail at UMass. I hope to see him soon in person and in a tournament. But here, no regrets about covering him for 10 years. I hate how it ended, but I understand why it had to.
David, before we let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Dawn Staley and women's basketball team bringing home a national championship. She's obviously a rock star in women's basketball, but just how much juice has she brought to that program and to women's basketball?
My guys, 14 years ago, I still remember people questioning me when I was reporting that Dawn Staley was going to be hired. What? I mean, why? Why do they even care about women's basketball? And then when it came out, she was making $600,000 a year. Oh my Lord! I can't believe they're paying her that much for a terrible product. Blah blah blah. Well, see what happens since. Yeah. It's not only winning and sustaining success, which is the hardest part to do, but it's made this a destination. it's made this the women's basketball program. I mean, one of a handful in the country, and it's got no signs of slowing down. And when your coach is also getting out there on national TV shows and ringing the bell at Sixers games and being the Olympic head coach, that's just publicity you cannot buy. So she's the best thing going. She's got the best team in the country right now, and it should stay that way next year. And they're just gonna they're paying her what she's worth, every penny of it. And it's showing no signs of slowing down. That's the best part that a program can be.
David, great stuff, man. Yeah. Glad we got you on. Thanks for your time. I know we had to push you back a little bit, but we appreciate you so much.
Not a problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's David Cloninger from the Post and Courier, South Carolina football. And then also Frank Martin and his time. We love Frank Martin. And then, of course, the question, as you mentioned.
Had to ask about Donte. He's won a national title. I mean, come on now. Yeah. And then, she's got some juice about her. She's got that program kind of like, one of those handful like UConn, South Carolina, Baylor, especially with Mulkey here. And, maybe there's a couple of others. And that's about it. They're one of those blue bloods, so to speak. But, good stuff there from him. And, Austin Stogner arriving in the summertime, I mean, that'll be a big boost for Spencer Rattler. That'll certainly help, that familiarity there. But, very excited to see Rattler and what he does. And I know it's kind of stylish to almost bash on the kid, and it has been really since he was a recruit because people didn't like him on the reality show and didn't, thought he had an attitude or whatever. Like, I remember my sister watched that reality show, and even though she likes Oklahoma, she couldn't stand him based on that. But it was also a reality show.
Yeah, but it'd be like the Kardashians signing with your favorite college team.
Yeah, like
if you already didn't like Chris,
right?
You wouldn't,
Right. So I mean, there's some people that didn't like him from the jump, and then obviously when you're hyped up as much as he was, if you're not perfect and you're not, winning every single game, then there's critiques and whatnot, and he had some bad moments, but obviously he's got a ton of talent and always has, and that's not gone anywhere. And familiarity with Shane Beamer, I think will be great for him, and he should have a solid year. The only problem is just who he's going to be going up against week in and week out. It's like even if he plays well, it might not show all the time because it's against Georgia and the rest of that cast and crew in the SEC. But good stuff there, and interested to see what they do this season.
A couple of headlines, and then coming at the bottom of the hour, John Machota covers the Cowboys in the NFL, the draft a week from tomorrow.
Speaking of South Carolina, big story today. Deebo Samuel out of San Francisco.
The wide receivers demanded a trade. I still think that's just posturing, right, Paul?
He did like a tweet that somebody sent in and said that you would look good in a Cowboys helmet. So he's checked off step one of the piss off your current employer.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, I think, as somebody pointed out, he's being paid to be a wide receiver, but he's really like everything on that offense. And so, there's some talk about him, hey, pay me like a guy who plays this position.
It's very unique.
It's the last year of his rookie deal, too. Yeah. It's the last year of A.J. Brown's rookie deal. There's another wide receiver out there as well. It's all the last year of their rookie deal. They're capitalizing. They're scrubbing the social media from the team and all that stuff.
Yeah, Kyler did that, too.
Yeah,
but I do think in his case, he has an argument. I mean, the way he's used,
he was at the end of the year and in the postseason as good as anybody else that was at the end of the year in the postseason.
It sure seemed like it. I mean, he was near dominant. It felt like watching. That is, as John McClain would say, whenever this pops up, anything like that, it's always about the money. And so just if you always remember that, then everything else makes a lot more sense and you're a lot less stressed out. So I'm sure that will be resolved one way or the other, but both of those guys, with him being a South Carolina guy, just fitting that we transition there.
Jalen Bridges, who's transferred